Hey, I'm Kai. Last night I watched the live stream for the Line 6 Helix Stadium and the Stadium XL release, and I wanted to put my thoughts together into a video. Now, in case you haven't seen it already, the Helix Stadium is the new flagship modeler from Line 6. It is an extension of the Helix line, but it expands on the current flagship, the Helix floor, in just about every conceivable way. They are releasing two new models which will both be available later this year. The Stadium XL is coming first. This has the scribble strips and the expression pedal and comes in at $2,200, while the regular Stadium doesn't have the expression pedal, doesn't have scribble strips, and this comes in $400 cheaper at $1,800. Now these are fairly pricey units and I'm going to need some help grabbing one to demo, so if you feel like checking out my Tom affiliate link, I would greatly appreciate it. The kickback from those affiliate links goes right back into the channel, and it'd be great to have one of the Helix Stadium units at launch. For a quick little piece of background as to who I am, I've been a Helix user since the LT released back in 2017. I've owned the LT, the Floor, the Stomp, and I'm a current user of both Helix Native and the HX1. I also moderated the official Line 6 Helix Facebook group for a number of years, so I'm very well versed in what the community have been asking for. I'd like to start this video on a positive note and go through some of the features that I am most hyped about in the Line 6 Helix Stadium. The first, of course, being the new Agora modeling engine. This engine will be showcased on 16 guitar amps and 6 bass amps at the launch of the unit. This does require the models to be completely redone for the new engine, so don't expect this to be compatible with the previous Helix amps. Instead, a more likely thing is that they release Agora versions of the Helix amps and then move the Helix amps to a legacy category. The Helix Stadium will be compatible with all of the Helix models though, which means all of the presets are backwards compatible. Another major feature that a lot of people have been asking about specifically for the Helix is that the Helix Stadium will be able to do amp and cabinet capturing. This will be available early next year. It's going to be interesting to see how this one compares to things like the Tonex, the Neural DSP Quad Cortex, as well as the current heavyweight that is the Neural Amp Modeler. Eric actually did say in the video that the jury is still out as to whether or not it will load Neural Amp Modeler captures, which I think they really should go for because that would be absolutely huge. He also hinted that it would be able to capture things outside of just amps and cabs, which could mean that this is the first unit that captures things like modulations and reverbs. They also bumped up the DSP for the Helix Stadium, which isn't just a feature that we expected to see, it's a feature that was absolutely necessary. I think the poly pitch update for the original Helixes is what really started to make them feel like they were lagging behind a little bit. These were a set of extremely DSP heavy effects that would require you to build your whole patch around them. My expectation here is that the Line 6 Helix Stadium will be able to load these poly pitch presets without so much as a stutter. The Stadium is also touchscreen, which is quite a surprise to see. I didn't expect Line 6 to be going down this route at all, really. It does seem like they're still fundamentally controlled by the encoders, which I guess is more in line with Line 6's ethos. Now, speaking of parameters, there is a new feature available on the new Agora amps that I think is going to be very, very interesting. It's called the Hype Control, and this merges between a super realistic version of the amplifier as well as the more hyped up, produced studio kind of version of that amp. I hope that it will do different things to different amps. So for instance, it will give JCM 800s a little bit more gain, it will take away some of the sag of a Plexi, and it will maybe tighten up a 5150. A feature that I'm particularly excited about that I have praised other modelers for before is the full descriptions on every block. This means that you can tap any parameter and get a full readout as to what the parameter actually does. For things like bass, middle, and treble, the readouts are going to be pretty obvious because everyone sort of knows what they mean. But when you get into stuff like the dynamic room reverb, for instance, you get some weirder things like motion that aren't really self-explanatory and would be great to have those descriptions above to tell you more about it. You can also quickly glance at what stuff is based on, or you can even use the search feature to type in the real version of that thing. So you can type in Marshall and it will show up all of the Line 6 Marshall models. Now there's one more super smart feature that I want to talk about that I don't think I'm going to use much, but I'm very glad that it's there. You can save a DI recording alongside your preset as well as text notes, and I'm assuming this is going to be the case for all of the factory presets in the unit as well. This means that if you're checking out a factory preset, or if you've downloaded something from the cloud, or if you've just bought someone else's preset, you can hear their DI through the patch and hear what it's supposed to sound like. I have a theory that this was a feature that Eric has specifically fought tooth and nail to include. He's gone on record many times before saying that factory presets are fantastic if you're using the right guitar and the right setup. This is one of those features that really shows that Line 6 are listening to the community and hearing what people are struggling with. Now, there was no mention of a DI match feature, but this may be something that could be included in the future as all of the presets can be loaded with this DI. Also, a super minor note to round off the things that I'm interested in, as someone that broke the USB-B port on their HX Stomp, I'm very glad to see them moving over to USB-C for the Helix Stadium. Other than that, the I/O is pretty much exactly the same as the Helix floor, except there are a few minor tweaks. The Variax port is gone and the Line 6 Link port is gone. They've instead been replaced by a Nexus port, which can be used to control a whole variety of different things, so they'll be selling a box separately that allows you to connect to things like the Power Cab or to your Variax. Let's now get on to some of my concerns regarding the Stadium and the Stadium XL. I want to start by saying these are all speculative concerns. I haven't had the unit in hand to be able to tell you how much of an issue these things are going to be. My first sort of concern is going to be in this new modelling engine. It's no secret that Line 6 have had a little bit of ground to make up as far as modelling accuracy goes, with people like Fractal really taking the top spot. I'm curious to see just how much more improvement has been made on the original Helix platform. Certain amps in the Helix just didn't respond like you would expect them to, so while you can dial them in very close to the real life counterpart, it does require a little bit of counterintuitive twisting. I personally found that one out when I was using the Rockaverb model. The EQ was completely different on the Helix as it is on the real amp, and the gain knob was set in a completely different place to get them sounding identical. Hopefully this improved accuracy just gives a little bit more scope of the real range of the amplifier. I think probably my biggest concern with the unit is that they may have just packed in too much stuff. Too many features, buttons, knobs, dials, switches, all that sort of stuff. It just looks very overwhelming to me. It's essentially a Helix, which was already pretty comprehensive, packed with a ton of additional features. That said, I do have faith in Line 6. I've been on record many times before saying that Line 6 are the absolute masters of making sure that beginners and professionals are covered. The beginner features are readily available, super accessible, while the pro features are there, but they're more tucked away and hidden. There are some features where it kind of feels like they are just bulking out the unit. With the showcase mode, you are able to load songs onto your Helix, which is presumably going to be through the micro SD card slot, which includes a 32GB micro SD. To achieve this sort of thing in a live setup with backing tracks though, you would need the Helix to be your main brain for the entire band rather than using a laptop with a dedicated interface. Now I know this is possible through the Line 6 Nexus as you have 10 outputs from there, but it still feels like a strange place to have your whole hub for your rig. Time will tell how useful that will actually be, but I don't think I can see this one replacing a laptop in a lot of live scenarios. Another minor concern that I have is the 5-way XY grid preset merging thing they had going on. This is sort of an XY pad that has different sets of parameters across different ranges of the pad, and you can blend between them, so you can go halfway between a solo tone and a rhythm tone, for instance, just to find exactly the spot that works for you. Now don't get me wrong, this is a very handy feature, and I think it is really exciting, but my main issue at the minute is that it just looks super clunky. These are all pre-release graphics, so of course everything is subject to change. I guess this is less of an actual concern and more just me hoping that they will overhaul the UI for this specific piece. They could probably just switch over from the rendered view of the model over to a dedicated XY pad, maybe pretty it up a little bit. It just keeps things quite a lot cleaner. Speaking of, the rendered view is kind of weird to me. The renders themselves aren't the best looking, but again, this is pre-release graphics, so that is what it is. What's weird is that they haven't gone for skeuomorphic displays. That is to say that you don't actually control the parameters on the amp itself. The amp is just there for a visual guide while you control the parameters using the encoders at the bottom of the screen. I do think it's kind of weird that you tap on the parameter and then the parameter loads up in the full screen view so that you can actually swipe across it, rather than just having the parameters on the model itself in this rendered view. My final sort of half concern here, and one that I've seen a lot of people bringing up, is the price. I can totally understand why they have priced the flagship at $2,200 and the one below the flagship at $1,800, but a lot of people are very upset about this. It's pushing a lot of people to immediately ask for a Stomp version, sort of like the Helix family did, where it went from the Helix to the LT, then down to the Stomp. I do think anyone waiting for the Stomp version is going to be waiting an awful long time. They want to get as many people on this new platform as possible. It's a big, exciting thing, so of course there's going to be people like me who are running out there to grab features that they don't really need. I can definitely see this. I think if the Stomp version was available instead of the other two, I would be rushing more towards that instead. As far as the price of the bigger units is concerned though, it's worth mentioning that this is very much in line with the other modelers. The regular Stadium is in line with the ToneMaster Pro, the Neural DSP Quad Cortex, as well as the Fractal FM9. I think people are mainly just upset that it costs more than the Helix, but what are Line 6 really going to do about it at this point? I mean, after all, it is essentially just a Helix but expanded. I think I'd probably go for the Stadium over the Stadium XL, save myself the $400 and forgive the Scrabble strips, the expression pedal and 2 of the effects loops. The XL does make a lot of sense for a lot of people, but it is one of the most expensive modelers on the market right now, with the only one above it being the Axe 3. Now, there were a couple of omissions from the live stream that I think I'd like to speculate on somewhat. While they mentioned that new guitar amps and bass amps were coming, they didn't mention any new effects. I expect we'll see these refreshed for the new unit, especially drive models now that they have more accurate tone stacks, for instance. We saw a couple of hints as to the signal chain throughout the live stream. One of the new features is that you can now have multiple splits in your chain, so you can split it out, then join it up, then split it out, then join it up again. This is good for having multiple different parallel things at different points in your chain. One thing we didn't see is whether or not it can do dual parallel splits. This is to say that your clean signal, your delay, and your reverb would all run in parallel with each other. I often use this one in the Fractal, so I think I would like to see this in the Helix Stadium. Something I'm very curious to know is whether or not the touchscreen supports multi-touch features. Things like a 2-finger tap to get straight back to the home screen, or a pinch and zoom to focus in on a certain parameter. Eric sort of half hinted at having a mobile editor, which makes sense given that the device has both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, but we didn't get any glimpses of this during the live stream. Hopefully this is something we see announced shortly. Also, while I imagine it's going to be some time before we even see it, I think Helix native Stadium is going to be awesome. Especially if it has the amp capturing stuff built in, sort of like the Tonex platform does. I think that would be absolutely massive. This would also really help bolster the community. For instance, if just the capture portion of the Helix native plugin was free, then everyone could upload them to the cloud, and then people with the full Helix units would be able to take those captures out and use them live. Let's now wrap things up into a conclusion. Overall, I am very excited about the Line 6 Stadium, if you couldn't tell already. They squeezed an awful lot of life out of the original Line 6 Helix for the past 10 years, constantly supporting it with 19 different firmware updates over that time. It just felt like it was not quite at the top. They also did mention that they may still be updating the original Helix platform alongside the Helix Stadium. I'm guessing this is just going to be for the compatible blocks, since they may as well port them over to the original Helix. Sort of like the Pod Go situation, where it's only able to get the compatible blocks, but it still does get some nice updates from time to time. Now, they packed a lot of stuff into this unit, and some may say it's too much. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not those power features hamper the experience for non-power users. The main takeaway from the Stadium and Stadium XL though is that they have addressed pretty much every single customer concern that they have ever received in the past 10 years, as well as every concern from every other modeler. The amp models in the original Line 6 Helix weren't as accurate as the ones in the Fractal, so they've upgraded their amp modeling. The original Line 6 Helix didn't have amp capturing like the Neural DSP Quad Cortex did, so they've added that. The original didn't have a touchscreen while stuff like the Head Rush and the Quad Cortex do, so they've added a touchscreen. Other things as well, like the DSP in the original Helix not being quite up to par with the rest of the modelers, so they've completely overhauled it. If what Line 6 has said about the Helix Stadium is accurate to the actual experience, then it has matched every single modeler on the planet and done other things that modelers can't do. So I will be trying to pick one of these up later on this year, so let me know in the comment section down below if that's something you would be interested in. That's all for this video, and I guess the last thing I want to say is if you are ever shopping at Thomann, please do use my affiliate link, as it goes a long way towards helping me out. Thank you for watching. I've been Kai.